Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the Marvel Select SABRETOOTH. Now, I know most of you are probably thinking, what's he doing reviewing a Marvel Select figure? He doesn't collect those. And you're right, I don't, generally speaking, and I can explain why as we go through this review, because they're really not very good figures in most cases. However, I got this guy just because I really wanted a Jim Lee style SABRETOOTH to go with my X-Men figures. Now, maybe Hasbro will do one in the Marvel Legends line someday, but for now, this is the only one that's available, and it wasn't very expensive, so I figured, what the heck, I'll grab him. And the scale isn't a big deal because in the animated series, SABRETOOTH was really big compared to Wolverine, so this will be fine. It'll fit in well enough, despite the fact that it's a pretty terrible figure. So let's get it off the stand and take a closer look. Alright, so this guy stands just about 7.5 inches, and that is with his legs being bent just a little bit, because he doesn't really stand straight up very well. If you straighten him out, it doesn't quite work. That makes him just about 19 centimeters, so he's definitely a little bit bigger, but he's not huge in relation to the Legends, so it'll be okay. Now, Marvel Select figures are generally known for having good sculpts and good paints, but less articulation. And that's kind of true in this regard. His sculpts are mostly pretty solid, pretty nice. I'm not too worried about the sculpts here. The articulation's definitely not very good, and then the paints are really not very good either, so it's a bit disappointing. I was expecting a little bit of a better paint job, but what are you gonna do? As far as accessories go, he doesn't really have any except for this display stand, which is nice enough. It's painted well enough. It's mostly just dry brushed metallic with a couple of little pieces you can peg in over here that have some paint. And then we also have this piece that pegs in and a little caution sign that's been scratched and broken or bent, whatever. So that's it. It has peg holes and his feet have pegs and his feet have peg holes. So he can stand on that if you want him to, but it's completely up to you. Now, as far as the paint goes, it's really not very good. Let's start with the head, I guess. That's probably the best place. He definitely has a bad paint job. His hair has black spots all throughout it. It looks really bad. It looks like a dirty figure that somebody got stuff all over. Now, the hair for his mane, if you want to call it that, that's actually much better. It's a lot cleaner. The shading's a little bit better. I like it a whole bunch more. The face itself, it's not too bad. I can live with it. But that hair, the yellow hair on his actual head just doesn't look very good, unfortunately. It's very poorly shaded with that black in there. It's terrible. And then for the rest of the body, we have some really big problems. If you look at the arms, we have orange up here, and then the painted orange down here is a completely different color. And the paint job on the articulation is particularly bad. And then the line work is not... It's not really line work. It's really fuzzy and not very well done. Sure, there's shading throughout the whole figure, but it doesn't work because the rest of the paint job is really sloppy. Even on the torso here, you can see that it's sculpted where the two lines are supposed to meet, where the brown into the orange is. It's not even painted to the lines, so that's not very good. These paint lines down here, they're very not clear, very fuzzy. If you look at this arm, this barely even looks like it's supposed to be a line. It's kind of just faded off into nothingness. So the paint job's really terrible throughout the figure. And he's really not the right colors. I mean, he could definitely be a little bit lighter in this spot. He could be a little more tan. And then in the dark reddish brown, it should be way more brown to my knowledge. At least that's how I've always seen SABRETOOTH. So it's very disappointing in that regard. Now, as far as the articulation goes, didn't expect it to be great, but it's not very great. So the head, you can move it up and down a little bit, just a tiny bit, a little bit side to side. I mean, leaning it, but just the tiniest bit, and then you can rotate it around. So that's okay, that's acceptable. The shoulders have ball hinges. You can bring them out almost horizontally, and they go all the way down. Then you can rotate them around. So that's acceptable. Again, I wasn't expecting much, so it's not that big of a deal. We have a hinge for the elbow, which works well enough. It doesn't give you quite 90, but it's all right. And of course, you can rotate that a bit if you need to. So again, that's okay. It's what I expected. Then the wrist has the hinge and the swivel in there, so that's just fine. The waist has a swivel. I do wish that the sculpt was better on the waist, though, because the way they sculpted his... are these obliques? Those are obliques, right? Anyway, they bulge out just a little bit weird, and it kind of throws off the as soon as you rotate him, it looks a little weird. I think they could have handled that a little bit better. For the hips, we just have the a Y-jointed hinge. So it'll peg in at an angle like that and rotate, and then you have the hinge. So that does give you some range of motion, but it's very difficult to pose him standing because of the way the knees line up with that. We have the same type of joint in the knee, so that'll rotate around and hinge. And then the feet, same type of joint again. You can rotate it and use the hinge, but since there's no ankle rocker, it's very limiting in how you can pose this guy and actually make him able to stand up. It's definitely problematic. So the reason I had him posed with his legs bent is because it's really just the best way to get his feet to be flat on the surface. So it's kind of problematic, and he's definitely not a good figure, really by any means. He's got some decent sculpt work and a very tiny bit of decent paint work, but that's about it. He's really just a spot filler, and I'm okay with that. I didn't pay too much for him, but he's definitely not great, so I can't say I really recommend him. I can just say if you really want a Sabretooth for your collection, this is your only option, and it's just passable enough for that to be okay. And that's about it. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see my upcoming figure reviews, custom figures, and other good stuff. We have new videos every day. We talk about action figures, movies, TV, all kinds of stuff, video games. So make sure you subscribe, and in the meantime, keep collecting.